Well, long remember the election of 1860. Um, it was in the midst of the troubles which we've outlined in other videos. Um, the choice of four people to try for an almost impossible job. I'm saying impossible job because I think after John Brown's raid, after the Dred Scott decision, after bleeding Kansas, it's a little bit hard to see how the country stays together. Um, Everybody is angry for taking shelter from the storm. Um, in any instance, you see the first real popular movement. Um, there had been popular movements before. Um, Certainly in 1840, William Henry Harrison had a popular movement. Martin Van Buren certainly tried to get one, but this is really a very well organized movement by the Republicans. Um, they began in a simple way. Five store clerks who supported Lincoln, but chapters spread across the country. Now, let's be clear: Lincoln is not the best known politician, not even close to being the best known politician in the country. Um, so the wide awakes, as they were called, um, they were not so much for Lincoln as they were against the South. Just as in the South, you now have militias organizing to defend themselves against being murdered in their beds by Northerners, so they thought. Now in the North, you have people who are standing up for the end of slavery, or at least the stop slavery from expanding. And you can see here the rules. This is the Chicago chapter, to act as a political police, to escort all prominent Republican speakers who visit our place, to attend all public meetings in a body, and they would have on ponchos, what today we might call poncho, and they would have a big eye right here. They would they would not only enforce order, they would enforce compliance. And this may sound familiar, attend the polls and see that justice is done to every legal vote. There's a lot of, in any true democracy, there's a lot of corruption. Yeah, I know. This is a sensitive topic as I'm giving this in January of 2021. Well, it's true. Any place that has a free vote, an unsupervised vote, the forces of corruption are going to try to take advantage of that. And that's just reality. And certainly not a political statement on my part. To conduct themselves in such a manner as to induce all Republicans to join them. Certainly Lincoln was maybe the third or fourth or fifth most important Republican who had won the nomination, because all the others essentially took themselves out. He wasn't well enough known to be hated by anybody. He also wasn't well enough known to be loved by anybody. In short, he was perfect to win the nomination for the Republican candidacy, because he hadn't made any enemies. He didn't have many friends, but he had even fewer enemies. To be a body joined together in large numbers to work for the good of the Republican Party. Nowadays, if you had something like this, whichever network opposed you, this would be seen as like a bunch of hooligans. Wide awakes were not hooligans; they were not mobs. That's silly stuff. But certainly in terms of creating pressure, that they could do and did. The candidates for the presidency, Abraham Lincoln wins the Republican nomination, as I said, simply because he doesn't have a lot of enemies. Stephen Douglas wins the Northern Democrat nomination. The Democrats as a party had gone together in Charleston, South Carolina, couldn't get along with each other, and split into the Northern Democrats and the Southern Democrats. And that would normally be the end of it, because you have a party that splits into two, the other party wins, right? That just makes sense. But it's a little more complicated than that. John Bell for the Constitutional Union Party, an old man or older man. Basically, the platform, this is a moderate party, and they intend to appeal to moderates. That's what they're there for. They don't think they can win outright, but they think that if they can just hold on in enough places, border states like Maryland and places like that, that maybe, they can kind of squeeze through. And then John Breckinridge. And Breckinridge had been a vice president. He'd been in a number of high offices in the United States. Very capable guy, no question about that. Very pro-slave. But he has a problem, and that problem's name is John Bell. John Bell can suck off enough votes that Breckinridge can't get there. So he's going to have to soften. Breckinridge is going to have to soften his stance on some things, but then you have a chance of not getting enough votes down south. So Breckinridge, he's going to win Southern votes, and he's going to win them big time. But is there any route for him? And I would say of all the candidates here, he is the one who has the toughest route. And I think the strategies that they use indicate that. Only Lincoln had a clear path to the presidency. There were enough electoral votes in the North to elect him, assuming that neither Bell nor Douglas sucked off too many votes. If they did, then it was all up in the air. Douglas, it was not common for a presidential candidate to campaign actively in those days. Basically, you waited for the presidency to come to you. But Douglas is going to campaign across much of the country. Again, he can get a lot of votes, and he is going to get a lot of votes. He's going to be the second largest vote getter. His problem is that there's no place he can win. He wins exactly one state, Missouri, and he wins in a tiny number of electoral votes otherwise. Bell has got to hope that Douglas soaks off enough votes to allow Bell to steal some votes. And if he can steal enough, then the election can be thrown into the House of Representatives. Breckinridge, his strategy is clear. He's got to outflank Bell. He's going to get the South, but that's not enough votes. That's only about a third of the votes you need. Well, not quite a third, but it's about half the votes you need to get there, electorally speaking. He's got to find enough votes to block Lincoln from getting a majority of the electoral votes. Now, if the election goes in the House of Representatives, it's pretty unlikely that Lincoln will win. So everything is dependent upon everybody knocking everybody else out and tossing it into the House. And then Lord knows what would have happened then. I rather suspect that either Douglas or Bell, but probably Douglas, would have emerged a victor. And you can see here the results, the county by county results in the northern section, with some few exceptions. Lincoln wins. And by the way, it's interesting that Douglas does better in Illinois, wins more counties in Illinois than Lincoln does. Breckinridge's support is in the South, but he doesn't have any support any other place. There's some fusion tickets. John Bell wins in the middle, right where he should have won, right where you'd expected him to win. And so, Lincoln's going to become president, not because he's getting over 40%, he's not. But he's going to become president because that's the way the Electoral College works. And had this mess, and the Electoral College did a good thing here, because had this mess been thrown into the House of Representatives, I think violence would have occurred in Congress. Certainly, people were very much on edge as the results came in. And as soon as it becomes clear that Lincoln wins, the Deep South, that's the 7 states, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, those states are going to leave by December. South Carolina's out of there, and the other states are going to follow them fairly quickly. They simply are not going to accept a president. Lincoln doesn't say that he is going to do away with slavery. He just simply says he's going to stop the spread of slavery into other territories, and you can see the results here. So the end of this, of course, is that Lincoln wins. Douglas, who has campaigned his heart out, is going to be permanently weakened by this campaign. Douglas was not a healthy man to begin with. And he also had a penchant for alcohol, and that doesn't help anything. At the nomination, Lincoln comes in at the inauguration. Lincoln comes in with a stovepipe hat, and Douglas is sitting there, and Lincoln turns around looking for a place to put his hat, and Douglas, very great manners, takes his opponent's hat. I think that's wonderful. If only the spirit of Douglas had appeared throughout the Union, maybe 600,000 or 7,000 people would have died. Bell basically goes back. He's an old man. He will die reasonably soon. Douglas dies in early summer of 1861. Breckinridge will be a general, vice president of the United States. An ex-vice president of the United States will be a general in the Confederate Army. And of course, Lincoln will go on to become the greatest president the nation has ever known. In somewhat in a fashion that says something about the time and place and all that, Lincoln learns to be president on the fly and turns into our greatest president. Only in fitting fashion, as much as I hate to say that, in a fashion fitting to the times might be a better way of saying that. To be gunned down 5 days after Robert E. Lee surrenders. What a sad time. Before this is all over, probably 7,000 soldiers will be killed, 2 million wounded. God knows what the civilian casualties were. All those folks who won the presidency, man, the weight they bore. They deserve to be applauded, all 4 of them, even if you don't like Breckinridge or Bell. It was an overwhelming job, and my hat's off to them for trying to do it. It was, of course, impossible. Anyway, I want everybody out there to take care and stay healthy. And we'll see you all another time.